Hello, 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 everyone. Dr. Rowena Winkler here. Started about a minute late because if you don't know already, I'm in my third trimester of my pregnancy and I really had to use the restroom because that's where we're at right now. And that's part of my brand right now. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the folks that will be watching the replay. We're going to talk about intuitive personal branding, and I'm going to share with you a little framework that I developed that's going to incorporate a lot of my expertise as a communication and marketing professional and professor, as well as more of the intuitive woo elements to help you get more in alignment with who you are as a human, as an essence, and as a brand. So, with that, I just want to chat really quickly about my own personal branding journey. So I have my PhD in communication, got that in 2013, which is hard to believe that was 10 years ago. Wild, wild and crazy. Time flies when you're having fun. I started off my career as a professor teaching public relations and communication. And then things shifted a bit. And so I moved into the industry after working as a tenure track professor. And I became a copywriter and a communications manager, working at both in-house comm and in agency settings. And then lo and behold, as we all know, we had that collective retreat that's called COVID-19, which I don't know about you, it shook things up a bit for me personally and for a lot of folks. And so, with that, and also with the birth of my beautiful baby girl, Kerrigan Lee, I decided to dive into entrepreneurship. And I'm a coach where I help women through different modalities such as astrology, tarot, human design, but I incorporate it with my skill sets as a career coach and as a comm professional. So you get a lot of fun things with me. And as a Pisces, I'm an intuitive as well. So using all those gifts to good use to help people and to help women feel empowered to show up as their authentic selves, whether that's through their own businesses, through the job market, through just life. So yeah, that's where I've been, and that's where I'm kind of been hanging out lately. So it's really important to get a sense of definitions, right? Here's like Dr. Rowena academic hat on. So I wanted to give some context as to what I perceive personal branding to be. And then we'll talk about how, in my opinion, intuitive personal branding is a little bit different. So when it comes to personal branding and your personal brand, right? Whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you are actively, working on it or not, everyone has a personal brand because the personal brand refers to how you want people to see you, right? How people perceive you. And when you want to build a personal brand, there is an intentionality that goes with it. There is an active engagement with how you show up in the world that's going to become your personal brand. So compared to something, let's say, like reputation, which is more about your credibility and what you bring to the table, your personal brand is about that visibility piece. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit in terms of how you can increase your visibility in a way that is in alignment with the values that you externally represent. And so that's part of that's piece of the puzzle, is determining, okay, does my value set, do the things that I firmly believe in, are they properly or accurately represented in the external, right? Am I showing up in a way that really reflects how I feel inside? And I mean, y'all, that's hard to do. Right? That's really hard to do, to step up and to really honor in integrity those values represent, especially if we're in, job situations or social media, right? We're showing up as these facades oftentimes in these masks. So we're going to talk about how, with intuitive personal branding, on the other hand, we can be closer to that authenticity and to that integrity. So when it comes to intuitive personal branding and what personal branding is not, right? It's not an act of narcissism. And I know that's really hard for a lot of us, especially if we're business owners or we're trying to build up a brand, right? We feel some resistance or anxiety about like, "Ugh, I keep like showing up. People think I'm so full of myself, or it's like ego driven. No, 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 no. It's not ego driven. It's not narcissistic. It's not self-absorbed or self-obsessed actions, right? We're not bragging about ourselves. It really is pushing that ego aside and pushing that part of me like, look at me, right? Oops, as I hit my microphone. um, it really is about showing up and sharing your story in the name of service, right? Because when we talk about that intuitive piece, it's inherently a divine feminine trait. And again, not to, make it about, male versus female, but in terms of that, right? The divine feminine is about that connection, is about that story, is about that service, right? Is about that heart-centered place that we're coming from. So, when it comes to intuitive personal branding, it's not look at me, look at me. It's, oh, hey, here's a story that I'm sharing. Here's a story that, that makes me uniquely me, which is part of my brand, and I'm sharing it as an act of creating resonance and relevancy with the folks that I'm trying to reach, right? And it's about that impact, right? We want to remind the folks that we're reaching out to that, hey, look, again, it's not look at me, I'm awesome. It's, hey, look at me, look at what I've been through and look at what I've experienced in my lifetime. You can do it too. You have the tools too, you know? If you're not familiar with my work, the framework I use is called the inner muse method. And what that means is that inner muse is that whisper, that intuitive, that voice. We have the answers that we need already. If you're looking to build your brand, you already know what that looks like. It's just a matter of calling it out. And so we're going to walk through what that looks like in just a little bit. So that's what intuitive personal branding is, but like why? Why do we want to go this route versus a more perhaps traditional branding perspective or approach? Because, intuitive by nature, there is an intentionality there, right? There is space for mindfulness and a mindful messaging, and I'll talk about message in a little bit. It's an invitation. Again, it's not just a pushing out of here's me and here's my brand. It's an invitation to engage with others in a more genuine way. I'm sure we all know those examples. We've seen those examples of brands that feel so contrived or feel just so out of alignment, right? And especially when it comes to perhaps things uh, like corporate social responsibility or social justice. I mean, we're hopping into June, which is Pride Month. How many times have we seen just random brands slapping on a rainbow version of their logo and that's it, right? So, no, in intuitive personal branding, it is intentional, it is genuine, it's not contrived, it's collaborative. It's about that connection. It's about story. It's about owning and sharing your story without any guilt or shame. It really is stepping into that. And then it digs a little bit deeper, right? It's not just, here I am, Dr. Rowena Winkler, I don't know, like I have a PhD or something like that, right? There's more nuance to it, which is very indicative of the human experience. That's who we are as people. And so why not show up as these nuanced versions of ourselves versus the filtered happy one, right? So it dives into that true essence of who you are. And I'm going to share some cool tools that we can use to really dig deep into what that is. Um, so gonna just, give a shout out to Brene Brown, right? Dr. Brene Brown, hashtag goals. Have the courage to be imperfect. Let go of what you should be, right? We spend so much time in our lives shoulding all over ourselves when we just need to understand that we can be perfectly imperfect as we are. And in my own experience as an entrepreneur and as a communicator, I've realized that it is those imperfections and it is those challenges that really resonate with people. It's not the like, oh, yay, look at me. It is being able to using, Brene Brown's language, like stepping to the arena, right? Being able to dare greatly and let go of the shoulds and just show up as you are. So, with that in mind, let's go into the framework that I've been teasing. So, this is the framework in regards to 4 areas in terms of intuitive personal branding. And we're going to talk about those today. The first is the mindset. So, we're going to look at how we can get our mindset in a place, looking at our intrinsic value, how we can move forward with more authenticity, how we can embrace that nuance that I already talked about a little bit. Then the message, right? Getting a little more into the nitty gritty, in terms of your content pillars, in terms of the insights you bring to the table. What's your overarching headline, right? Or your pitch when it comes to who you're showing up as. And then we talk about that meticulousness, which I know it's not, that doesn't feel as sexy, but it's part of the framework because it's so important, right? If there's no consistency, if you're showing up only sporadically, if you are showing up in a way that feels off, but you're unwilling to evolve and experiment and maybe even fail, y'all, right? Like, listen, I'm a recovering perfectionist. That's scary AF, but we need to go out there on a consistent basis and have that structure and have that meticulousness, right? And then the memorability piece. So, how can you make yourself memorable to the folks that you are reaching out to? Whether that is, who are your audiences? What media make the most sense based on your target markets? And then that marketing piece that's really important. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, feel free to pop in comments. I see my buddy Phil popped in there. So yeah, if you have any questions, obviously, we can answer that and have a dialogue. And folks that are watching the replay, feel free to reach out. I'm very easily accessible in terms of email and DMs and all that fun stuff. So let's move into the mindset. Mindset is the how and what. So, personal branding as a mindset refers to how you think and what you're thinking, right? Like how you're approaching things and approaching yourself and your brand, and what is the content, right? So, this can refer to your own intrinsic value, also known like as your UVP, right? It's a sales term, unique value proposition. So think of the UVP as when we talk about what are our favorite brands, like what's our favorite brand of chips or makeup or soda or clothing designer, right? What what is your unique value proposition? What can you bring to the table? What's your unique differentiator, right? And then also thinking about how others perceive you. And this is, to derive to this clearer mindset, it really is embracing you in your most unapologetic, unfiltered authenticity. If you're familiar with me and my content, have been following me for a while, you know that I hammer in authenticity. Like that's something I talk about a lot in the work that I do because it's so important. And yet it's so difficult, right? To show up unapologetically as our authentic selves. But here's the thing, right? As I've already talked about, we are multifaceted people. We have a lot that goes on below the surface, and you have your unique story. So at the end of the day, when it comes to building that brand, get into the mindset that your story is uniquely yours. Your truth is uniquely yours. And intrinsically, within that inner muse, right, is going to let you know exactly what needs to be shared, what needs to be put out there, right? Because we don't have to be oversharers. I know that that's me by nature. You know me, I do love to share my stories, but that's not necessarily the case. Doesn't have to be. Don't feel like, oh no, Dr. Rowena is saying to build a personal brand, I have to share all the things. That's not necessarily true, right? It's being able to share what you feel would resonate and be of relevance to the folks you want to reach. So, how do we get there, right? Because it's like, oh, easier said than done. Okay, mindset, haha. Like what tools are available to me to help me tap into you know, who I am in my authenticity, who I am in terms of my unique value proposition, who I am in terms of my, intrinsic value and whatnot. Well, let me tell you. And of course, as I already alluded to at the beginning, these are the tools that I work with my clients, right? And of course, there are a variety of other tools, but these tools have helped me personally and have helped the women and the folks that I've worked with gain more insight into who they are, right? So of course astrology, right? I do natal chart readings. I'm like, okay, so you have your Mercury, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. Your Mercury is in this house and in this sign. That gives you a sense of how you communicate. Your Venus is in this house and sign. This gives you a sense on how you build relationships, right? And what your aesthetic and connection to value is, right? Where do things hang out in that second house, the second house of finances, if you're trying to build a business, those sorts of things. And I will say this, I know that folks are like, or they get a little bit scared by astrology. The way that I approach astrology is through an empowerment lens, thanks to my coach, Natalia Benson, who I've learned from, right? This is an empowering piece. It's not end all be all doom and gloom. No, astrology, I like to approach it like weather predictions, right? The weatherman could say it's going to rain today, and I go out in my rain boots and I have my umbrella and no rain comes. It's the same with astrology. We still have free will, but this tool is here to help us and to give us a blueprint and some guidance on how we can get to that mindset of our authentic self. And then, in a similar vein, right, human design, another fantastic tool. It gives you a sense of how you can approach the day to day, how you can approach relationships, business, career, right, life, love, that sort of thing, because it gives you a sense of how you operate. Like what how do you show up as your type? So I am, a sacral generator. You can probably gather that from me because I'm very energetic and I like love to get shit done. But at the end of the day, I now know because of my human design, I need to tap into that sacral energy, right? I need to tap in and say, okay, is this a hell yes? If not, then it's a no. And that's really, really powerful to know that the setting boundaries can help me really dive into the work that I am meant to do, right? That's just like one little snippet slice, but I work with that with my clients and it's really helpful. And then the tarot. The tarot is so powerful because it's this divination tool, right, that we can use as I speak. I have sessions with clients where literally we'll just have a conversation, we'll have a coaching session, and I'll draw cards while we talk. And it gives some additional insight on like, ooh, maybe we should unpack that a bit. And then by unpacking that, maybe we can release some things, right? Maybe there's some things that's been, swirling around in the subconscious for a hot minute. But maybe with the use of cards like the tarot, it can really help like blow that wide open. Okay. So those are the mindset tools. Moving on to area number 2, which is the message, right? So this matrix is based off of Jessica Zweig's work. I think I pronounced her name correctly. She has an agency called like the Simply Be agency. She has a book. She really, dives into branding, personal branding, also branding for corporations and whatnot. Very successful, very got some really good insights. I would check her out if you are interested in that. But when she talks about the matrix and determining like who am I, like what is my message, she has these 3 parts, right? The first is the headline. Think of it as, if there were a book title or a movie title of your life, of who you are, what is that title, right? What is that single definition that encompasses who you are as a brand? Once you get that headline set in stone and feeling good about it, like that's going to help drive everything else. So really like hone in on that. And I will say again that, it doesn't have to be set in stone. We as people, as you saw in my own story, we as a personal brand, we evolve as we change, as things happen in our lives, as we go through a global pandemic, right? Like it, don't feel like, oh no, here's my headline. I'm done. No, it can change, but it gives you a good starting point, right? And then we have the pillars. if you're familiar with, content marketing or communication marketing type of work, there's like content pillars, right? So these are the themes, the values that kind of are underneath that umbrella headline. And what's important to keep in mind is to be as clear and as consistent as possible, right? We'll talk about consistency when we get to the meticulous piece of it, but clarity is key. We don't want to be in this, weird nebulous state. That has happened to me in my own evolution as a business owner. I feel like I'm trying to get a little bit more refined, but, as I mentioned, I've done a lot of things in my life and I just want to help people. So I'm like, well, I do this and that and blah, blah, blah. Right. So clarity is always helpful because, especially for people that may not know me as, an energetic multi hyphenate, they probably are thinking, what the heck does this woman do? So clarity in those pillars is key. And then the unique insights, that goes back to that unique value proposition. It's that differentiator, right? And what does that do? The unique insights, those stories, those the the differentiate the unique values that you bring into, they then feed into those pillars, right? They add some depth and substance to those pillars, which then make up the headline. So do you see how it kind of goes, right? So that matrix is able to give you a framework to develop that message. And then when it comes to the message, some other considerations to think about is, again, I'm gonna shout out my girl. I wish she was my best friend. Brene Brown, right? Intentional vulnerability, empathy, being intentional with the tough stuff. And then, another, and I can share the slides after the fact too for folks that are watching and are interested because I have links to all of these things. Robin Roberts talks about the mess is your message. I'm sure you've heard that before. If not, it's really powerful because, again, people don't want to see the perfection. They don't want to see like the carefully curated vacation photos on Instagram. No, they want to know, like, dang, I went through it. We think about the hero's journey. We got to go through that valley before we come out the other side. So share those stories. They're really resonant and really powerful. And then when it comes to the different tools, right, going into, more of that intuitive piece that I was talking about before with the mindset and using astrology and whatnot, some other ways to really dig into what that message is, what your mess is, what you're dealing with, there's a practice of EFT tapping, because here's the thing, y'all. If your nervous system is all out of whack and you have all this anxiety and all this trepidation and all this, there's like rumination going on here, like, I don't know what, how am I showing up and how this is going to work, or I'm worrying too much about the future, but then my past and blah, right? EFT tapping is a way that we can tap on those meridian points and take a deep breath and move energy through so we can be like, we can get in a better place. I will, share this slide deck because I have, if you go on my YouTube channel, I have some EFT tapping videos that hopefully I can, continue to add to. And then in terms of the alignment piece, right, at the start of the year in 2023, I hosted a free alignment audit workshop. So you can look at the different areas of your life and see, okay, what were some of those challenges? What were some of the lessons learned, right? So that can also help you get closer and closer to what that message is, what that headline is like, okay, where are the instances in my life? What are the areas that, may have been out of whack, but are better now? Or like, maybe I'm still a work in progress and people are here for it in terms of my story. That can be helpful as well. And then the copywriting, obviously, that's much more of there's the traditional sense of copywriting, but what I'm proposing here is what I call intuitive copywriting. So similar to this, I taught a workshop on intuitive copywriting, which essentially is a different way of approaching copywriting. So it's less like, I'm doing this, I don't know, less, best practices in terms of marketing, blah, 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 but more, again, diving into that heart-centered communication and how you can show up in a more embodied, holistic way. Yeah. Okay, so those are the tools, and that is the message. Let's move on to area number 3, which is the meticulousness, right? It's that structure, it's the strategy, y'all. Now, I don't know about you. I definitely love me a good strategy. I love a good roadmap, but not everyone's here for it, right? But as I've mentioned before, remember, just like we're all here as soulful human beings, the personal brand is going to iterate and evolve. Don't feel that you have to stay tied to something if it no longer feels good to you, if it no longer resonates, if it no longer feels aligned. That's cool, baby. Just do the exercises again and crank out a different version. That's so cool. Which is why when it comes to building our personal brand, why it's so important to stay present, right? And stay aware of how you're feeling, right, in this current iteration of the brand, but also aware of how others are perceiving the brand. Because as we talked about at the jump, personal branding is about how not only how you perceive yourself, but how others perceive you. And the fact of the matter is sometimes strategy could be boring, like, "Ugh," I don't want to do another strategy meeting. But that structure is so key, like you have to have that blend. You can't just go like like being a free bird in terms of that. The strategy really provides that container and that structure. And again, depending on who you are, what your astrology is, what your human design is, there may be some more flexibility and agility with that versus, for example, like I'm a Capricorn rising, so I love the structure, but it does help us discern. It helps us distill. It helps us provide the space so that we can really tap into what that brand essence is, right? Let's get a quote from another role model of mine from like a performance standpoint, Lady Gaga. There is a discipline for passion. If you are super passionate about something, if you're like, hell yes, this is what I want to do in terms of my career, in terms of my business, in terms of just how I show up in the world, right? Like this is who I am. This is what really really lights me up and lights a fire under me or lights a fire within me, and that's how I want to show up in the world. There is a discipline to that. I mean, Gaga is like she is a prime example of how she channeled her passion for performance into this disciplined, you know, I mean, she really, gosh, if you haven't watched, I think it's called 5'2", that Netflix series on her Super Bowl performance, wowie, like you can see the discipline there. I know that Beyonce is a similar vibe, right? She's a Virgo, so that's very much like on brand. Like these performers they're taking their skill sets and really channeling it into a disciplined practice. Okay, so according to another role model, Oprah, right? This is what Oprah speaks to in terms of personal branding and the meticulousness of intention setting. She's really big, like she had this aha moment in her career trajectory of intentionality and how with everything that she does from the show, right? That's her hit show to the O network to all of the media, all the philanthropy, that intention is so key. So she talks about how staying true to your intention, that the intention behind your actions is what becomes your brand identity. Because as we talked about before, if there's no integrity there, it we can read it, right? We are savvy now as audiences and as consumers. We can like see through the BS, right? We can see when something is contrived. So that is what ultimately is going to become your brand identity, is that intention. And then the consistency. Again, consistency allows the message to continue being shared, being seen, right? It helps alleviate confusion. If you're not consistent with the intention behind the brand, that is going, that's going to read in many different ways for the folks that you're trying to reach. Now, in terms of the more like woo intuitive piece of it, holistic, I guess, piece of it, esoteric piece of it, here's some astrological considerations, excuse me, when it comes to building that consistency and that structure, right? So thinking about things like your brand voice. So what is the tone? What's the personality? How do you want to present online? Again, if you follow me, on social, you see that I'm not afraid to drop a cuss there. I'm a Jersey girl, and sometimes, I, I do that. Or, I have like, hey, blah, right? So it's very a casual, approachable tone, approachable voice, excuse me, right? So that's the personality. That's how I'm showing up as. So for example, from an astrological standpoint, what the different planets in your chart, right? Where they're placed in your astrological chart can help you determine that brand voice. In particular, your Mercury placement, right? Because Mercury is the planet of communication. So by knowing where your Mercury lies in your chart, you can get a sense of like, ooh, that's my vibe. And then there's the brand tone, right? So that's kind of the flavor, right? That's like the little seasoning that we add to the brand voice. And analogous to astrology, this is the sign that rules those planets. I just like, where's my, hold on a second. I just realized, like, wait, where is Rowena's Mercury? I should know this. That's what I thought. Okay. So, for example, my Mercury placement is in Pisces. Should have known. Here I am talking about like astrology and communication. And of course, Pisces is very the more esoteric, free-flowy type of situation. Um, and my Mercury is in my third house of communication. So not surprising here that your girl's got a PhD in communication talking about the spiritual in this personal branding workshop. So there you go. And then the visuals could give you whether that's your logo, the imagery that you use, such and such. An example of that could be your rising sign. There could be other way, like I mentioned, the Venus in your chart is also the aesthetic. Rising sign is like how you show up externally. So again, those are some things astrologically that we can look at to tap into. Ooh, maybe this is what your brand could look like, right? Okay. And then memorability. That's the last piece. That's the number 4. That's the fourth area. Memorability. I already talked about this previously. You can't be memorable. People aren't going to remember you if you're not showing up. Like, how are people going to know who you are if you're not even putting yourself out there? So, here are some prompts to consider as you are working through a visibility strategy. Who's your key audience? Where are they at? How do you connect with them? Are they on social? Are they not? Do they like email? Do they want to go see you live like this, right? What about the media? What outlets would be the most beneficial to increase visibility, right? Do they want to see you as a thought leader on XYZ publication or blog? Do they listen to a particular podcast that you can, based on your brand, you can be a part of, right? And be a guest on that podcast, that sort of thing. And then the marketing tools. Golly gee, there's so many tools out there now, right? So which ones are worth investing? Which ones are worth integrating into your brand to increase that visibility? And some tools, right, that we can use from a marketing com perspective is, your website, your blog, your the emails that you send, the content that you use, right? And then the public relations piece. So help a reporter out, or called Haro. It's a really great starting point for folks that are building their own brand and business, right? Because you're able to get a listserv email digest of the reporters that are looking for experts and thought leaders. That can get you some media placements right out the gate. There are, and through, as I mentioned, the tools that I've talked about, you can figure out, and through the messaging matrix, right? You can figure out what that content is going to be to then push it out there to these different channels, right? So, building that website, building that content, and getting those media hits. Well, there you go. Those were the 4 areas. And before we say goodbye for the day, I just want to talk really quickly about one of the offerings that I have as part of my business, and it it touches on a lot of what we talked about today, right? I have something that's called intuitive marketing and business planning, right? It's more of like a business focused, but also, if you're trying to build out your personal brand, or again, I do career coaching as well. So if you're looking to figure out the narrative for how you're going to brand yourself, that's there too. Some things that I do in regards to this offering is looking at your competitors. Actually, let me pull up. I'm going to do the whole so you can see it. There you go. Looking at your competitors, right? The exemplars of uh, you know, who you who you look up to in terms of your brand, right? What's your why? What's your North Star? What's your mission? Then we do the branding, right? Looking at those things that I talked about already today in terms of astrology, human design, your essence, your preferences. If you need a website, I got you. I'll show you an example that I've built for a client. And then, as a communications professor for many years, I've taught a lot of public speaking. I've also helped executives at the corporate level with speaking. So if you need to do a speech, if you need to work on your elevator pitch, if you need to work on interviewing skills, I got you. As I mentioned, my Mercury is in the third. I got a lot of planets in my third house in my natal chart. So communication is very, very important and comes quite easily to me. If you haven't gathered that by now, if you're not looking for something so like, whoa, that's a lot, Rowena, I don't know if I need all that. I also have what's called the intuitive marketing bundle, which if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for some help, right? It includes that intuitive copywriting masterclass that I alluded to or I referenced earlier in the presentation. I also have a masterclass on calls to inspired action. So what a call to action is, a CTA is like literally that button there, check out, right? It's a masterclass on how to write some CTAs. There's a branding audit. So looking at all the stuffs you already have, your website presence, your social presence, your, whatever's out there in terms of your brand. And then I create personal branding boards. So some examples to show you that, I've done this and I'm, not just making things up. Here is a client website that I had designed and built, a holistic wellness website here. Very, very beautiful. I guess I should have done a before and after, but I don't even know if I have the before. But we had a good time building this site. And then here are some examples of brand boards, right? So my brand board, you see on the left, you probably can recognize a lot of the color schemes and the logos and whatnot, and then a client brand board. So again, right, like very different. These are very different vibes. But when I talk to each client, we get down and drill down, like, what is your essence? What feels good to you? What resonates? Well, how do you want to show up in the world? Okay, so let me go back to this layout here because I'm going to just chit chat really quick about this special offer. I really appreciate y'all coming here and being a part of this. I hope this was super helpful. Honestly, just scratching the surface of what more we can do. But I think, hopefully, I hope it was a good primer to get you well on your way. But if you're like, dang, I really enjoyed this and I want to look more at the messaging piece or at the visibility piece, right? For simply attending the workshop today, if you go to, the code, if you want to do the bundle or if you want to do the one-on-one intuitive marketing or biz planning offering, if you use the discount code brand me please, PLZ, all caps, you can get 33% off of that. So very, very fancy. Would love to work with you. I also, if you're like, I'm not sure about the Rowena, I do, we can hop on a call and chat through what is helpful for you. I also do, I know Jenna says here learning about astrology. I also do one-off, astrology readings. So let's say that you're a business owner or you're trying to figure out your career path or trying to figure out something. I can look at your natal chart and give you some insights on that as well. So that's also something that I can provide for folks. So with that said, ba-da-ba, that is the end. If there's any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments or in the chat here. Otherwise, this was a lot of fun. I feel like, I don't know, I think I'm in my burst uh of energy because I felt like, as I mentioned at the beginning, I had this um I'm in the middle of this pregnancy and I was feeling a little tired, but I think I was just revved up. I was like, "Ooh, yay, branding." So, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for the folks that will be watching the replay. And again, if you have any questions about the special offering, brand me please, PLZ, all caps, no spaces for a fun 33% off. If you're interested in just the astrology piece of it, I also have a membership offering that I just revamped this year because we're in the 1 year anniversary of my membership. It's just going to be astrology focused. I realized that in the year that I've been doing this, again, your girl was trying to do too much, but I really appreciate and love empowering folks through astrology. So check that out. That's like a monthly membership offering that's you know, pretty cost effective, I guess, or I don't know. It's not as, a massive undertaking as perhaps some of the one-on-one things that I provide. So, there you go. That's it. Thank you so much. I love to hear your feedback. I love to connect with you offline, and I hope that everyone has a lovely day, and we'll talk soon. All right, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye.